program starts in 5 minutes. Program starts in 2 minutes. Starts in 1 minute. This program
Hello,
starts now.
hello everyone. This is Smita and welcome again to Hyderabad Runners weekly webinar series Beyond the Track. Hyderabad Runners, since its inception, has made its mission to create active lifestyles and make running as a preferred form of fitness activity. Hyderabad Runners has been doing this through many of its local running groups and mentors all over the city and has been supporting running groups outside Hyderabad too. Couch to 5K, Outdoor Kids, Train and Shine Fitness Program, yearly University of Hyderabad Club Runs, and the flagship event of Hyderabad Runners, the AHM, Airtel Hyderabad Marathon, is Hyderabad's only full marathon event, are a few examples of our core activities. Apart from reaching out to various stakeholders and advocating the idea of active lifestyle through talks, local runs, yoga, etc. Times are changing. With most of the countries unlocking their economies, the new normal is very quickly taking shape, and it looks like learning to live alongside the COVID-19 virus is one of the criteria we have to accept now. As we are starting to get back to some normalcy in our lives, it is much essential that we continue to be more cautious to keep ourselves and our families healthy and safe by following all the hygiene and distancing guidelines issued by the local government. We at Hyderabad Runners wish you all a long and healthy life ahead. As part of our initiative to keep you constantly aware and educated in these uncertain and turbulent times, we bring you Beyond the Track, a live webinar series of conversation with some of the highly distinguished experts from running and related sports field to help you equip yourselves with both knowledge as well as practical training. In this 13th edition of Beyond the Track, we are honored to connect you to Adharanand Finn, a well-known author and journalist. Let me quickly remind you all once again by requesting patience from all in case of any network issues. We will do our best to make this a smooth learning experience. Also, we have some questions already you have sent us to ask the speaker. Request others to post your questions in the comment section of the video and we will get them answered to the best of our ability. Without further ado, I would like to invite Amit Shishagar, an active member of Hyderabad Runners, to introduce and welcome our speaker for today. Over to you, Amit.
Thanks, Mita. Dear fellow runners, Adharanand Finn is not a new name to the runners fraternity worldwide. In addition to being an amazing ultra runner himself, he is one of those rare specialists who have captured his vast running experience in words for all of us to emulate. He is the author of 3 critically acclaimed books, namely Running with the Kenyans, The Way of the Runner, and The Rise of the Ultra Runners. His penchant for studying running cultures of different countries is easily understood by his dedication towards his cause. In 2012, he took his family, 3 kids, and wife to the Kenya, Mecca of running champions, to find out why Kenyan runners are the fastest in the world. He also spent a year in Japan to experience the Japanese obsession with running. His book, The Way of the Runner, records his journey and the secrets how the Japanese have remained one of the top 3 nations at marathon running. For his book on ultra running, The Rise of the Ultra Runners, A Journey to the Edge of Human Endurance, he took an extraordinary journey and ran 10 ultra marathons, which includes a 100-mile run across the desert in Oman, the Sri Chinmay 24-hour track race, the Comrades Marathon in South Africa, and the famous UTMB, a 105-mile race around Mont Blanc in the Alps, which crosses through France, Italy, and Switzerland. He has been twice shortlisted for the William Hill Sports Book of the Year, and in 2012 won Best New Writer at the British Sports Book Awards. His first book was named Sunday Times Sports Book of the Year. In addition to being an author, Finn is also a journalist writing regularly for The Guardian, The Telegraph, The Financial Times, Runner's World, amongst other magazines. He also presents a podcast called The Way of the Runner, Conversations on Running with Adharanand Finn. It is a privilege to welcome him amongst the Hyderabad Runners fraternity today and get benefited by his rich experience. Here I welcome Adharanand Finn on all our behalf. Over to you, Adhar.
Hello, thank you, Amit. That's nice. It's great to be here. So I'm mainly going to talk about my first 2 books, Running in Kenya and Running in Japan, and what it's like there, and what I discovered when I went on my trips. So first of all, why did I go to Kenya is probably the first question, and a lot of people will know that Kenyan runners are great, but maybe not everybody knows that, and maybe not everybody knows quite how great they are. So I'm just going to throw a few statistics at you, a few facts, which are incredible, really. So I went to Kenya in 2011, which was a particularly strong year for the Kenyan runners. So how great they are. So I'm just going to. Hello, someone talking. Okay, so so in 2011, I traveled to Kenya, and in that year, I mean, if you think about it, marathon running and half marathon running is probably the most widely participated sport in the world, the most accessible sport, the most universal sport. Like cricket is not played everywhere. Soccer, football is not played everywhere, but running happens everywhere. Every big city in the world pretty much has a half marathon and a marathon, where you have people, you know, in those countries and in other countries training hard, training their hardest to try and, you know, do well. Obviously, a lot of people just want to finish, but there's always that core group of people who are you know, are super fit. They're the fastest people in their running clubs, and they're, you know, and they're pushing themselves. And yet in 2011, the top 20 fastest marathon runners in the world were all Kenyan, every single one of them. And of the top 100 runners that year, 67 were Kenyan. And that's in the men's racing. The women's racing, this was incredible. Again, in 2011, in the World Athletics Championships that year, the women in the 5,000 meters came first and second. In the 10,000 meters, they came first, second, third, and fourth. And in the marathon, they came first, second, and third. So this is an incredible running dominance. That year was the year you had to qualify for the Olympic Games in London, the 2012 Olympics. And the UK, where I'm from England in the UK, we had two runners who gained the qualifying time of 2 hours and 12 minutes. So there was a bit of dilemma because they needed three runners and they ended up extending the qualifying time, but only two runners achieved the qualifying time. That year, 451 Kenyan runners achieved the qualifying time. And incidentally, the qualifying time was 2 hours, 12 minutes. The fastest Indian runner in 2011 that year ran 2 hours, 21. So it was 9 minutes off the qualifying time. So just as a little perspective. So Kenya, there's something going on, okay? There's something incredible going on. And in some ways, I felt like it was one of the greatest stories in sport. It was this complete, total domination of the world's most popular, most universal, most accessible sport by one small, impoverished East African country. So how's that happening? I should add that in most years, there's quite a few Ethiopians rivaling the Kenyans. It was a particularly dominant year for the Kenyans, but between them, the Kenyans and the Ethiopians have that same kind of dominance most years, and then neighboring countries in East Africa. So that little corner of the world had some magic going there. So I decided, I headed out to this town called Iten to find out what was going on. Iten is, as Amit said, I went there with my family, with my wife and 3 children. And we picked Iten because there was a hotel. There are lots of these areas where the runners live. There aren't many hotels, but Iten is a particularly interesting place. And I just have a few photographs I'm going to share at this juncture. So this first one, I hope you can all see this. This is me. So part of the book is called Running with the Kenyans. And part of my goal was to train myself and run a marathon. I had this goal to run a sub 3-hour marathon, which maybe I won't ruin the book. If you haven't read it, you can find out if I do that. But obviously that was very slow in Kenya. In fact, in this town, in Iten, so this is a small town. There are this is the sign at the entrance to the town. Welcome to the home of champions. And it's not an exaggeration to call this town the home of champions. It's a small town, almost a village, about 40,000 people living there. And there's somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 professional runners, full-time runners. Now, not all of them are making a living out of running, but they're living as if they're professional runners. So they are fully focused on running. They do nothing else. They just eat, sleep, train, and they're all gunning for, you know, basically to win the Olympics, break the world record, every one of them. So it's an incredible place. And it's the kind of place where you go out for a morning run, and if you know your runners, you know, a world champion will pass you on that track. Then the next corner, an Olympic champion will go by. You might even get joined by an Olympic, you know, finalist on your run. It's just an incredible place. And I've got a few more pictures while we're here. So this is just a regular, I'm just standing here and all these runners came by, took a picture. They train in these big groups. Everyone trains together. This was the local cross country. They have just the town cross country. And the quality of the competition was incredible. The junior men's race was won by a guy called Isaiah Koech, who went on to break the junior 5K world record a few weeks later. The junior women's race was won by a woman called Faith Kipyegon, who in the last 2 Olympics won the 1500 meters. The men's race, I caught the winner of the men's race crossing the line. This is Jeffrey Mutai. That year, he went on to run 2:03 in winning the Boston Marathon, which at that time was the fastest marathon ever run. This is just the local town. It's quite an amazing place. Incidentally, so if you're wandering around this town and runners, we meet runners, and you meet runners the whole time, especially like me, if you're there to meet runners. And everybody introduces themselves not by their name, but by their time. So someone will say, oh, you have to meet this guy. He's a 2:07, or this guy is 59. That's their half marathon time. And you never meet anyone who, it's interesting. I looked this up as well. The Indian national record, so the fastest time ever run by an Indian runner ever is 2 hours and 12 minutes. So in Iten, in this small town with 40,000 people, if you met someone who said 2:12, you'd almost have to stop. You know, 2:12, God, that's slow. That's you know, that's it. That's interesting. So so this is an incredible place, and I spent 6 months there doing my research, going around meeting as many runners as I could, running with them, asking as many questions as I could. Just to illustrate that I brought my family with me. This is we lived in a local house in this small town. This is my kids with their neighbors. They made friends. I just love that picture, so I had to put that in there. Oh, we're not at that yet. So the big question is, what did I find? What did I find in that 6 months, and why are they so good? Why are they so incredibly good at running? So, I mean, this is, in a way, this is a subject which I could talk to you for hours on, and so I'm not going to go into every single element, because what happens, there isn't one simple answer to this. There's a very famous coach. He's coach of lots of the top runners, Brother Colin O'Connell, an Irish, he was a teacher at the school, but he's now one of the top coaches. And he says the secret is that everybody thinks there's a secret. There is no secret. And in some ways he's right. There's no one thing you can say, oh, if we all did that, we'd all be able to run like the Kenyans. It's basically, it's a coming together of lots and lots of factors. And together, it's like this perfect stew pot of incidents and factors and geographic location and everything coming together at one place to create the perfect breeding ground for running. So I'm just going to talk through a few of these, some of the ones which I consider the absolute key. And the first thing is just the numbers. So I've talked about this one town, Iten, having between 1,000 and 2,000 runners. And it's difficult to say because no one's ever counted them, but they're everywhere. But Iten is just one of the running hotspots. There's a place called Kaptagat, there's Eldoret, there's Ngong, there's Nyahururu, there's Kericho. There's all these other areas with similar numbers of runners, all 100% focused on running. So they're not people who are like have jobs. They're not people who are, you know, maybe thinking they just want to break 3 hours. These are people who are all gunning to, in their minds, they're all gunning to run London Marathon, New York Marathon, and win the marathon. So they're not all going to achieve that, of course, but the numbers of people gunning towards that is it makes it hard to compete against. When you think in the UK, we probably have people living like professional athletes. It's probably 20 or 30 in the whole of the UK in terms of distance running. So already you've got this huge disparity, and this creates lots of kind of related factors. So, you know, success breeds success. So there's a lot of role models around, people who start winning. Someone you know, someone you train with, someone from your village wins a big race. you know, maybe they win the Delhi half marathon, or they win the, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be London or New York, but they come back, and in Kenya that they've won a lot of money, they build a big house. So this is inspiring, and you can go out and you can run with these people. They're very accessible. They all live in the same areas. They have big training groups which anyone can join in with. So there's a lot of inspiration. There's a lot of role models. Just having people to run with, running in groups, running together, running in these, you know, it creates this energy. Like at the moment with the lockdown that has hit the world, it's also hit Kenya. A lot of the training groups are being disbanded. They've been told you can't train in groups anymore. And the Kenyans are really struggling with this because they're used to training in these big groups where you don't really have to think. You don't have to say, oh, what am I going to do today? Or shall I go, or shall I go later? You just know that at 5:50, which is the usual time for the morning run, you're going to meet on the corner, and there's going to be 100 other runners there. You're just going to start running, and you just go with the flow. It takes all the thought and the kind of dilemma and the motivation out of it, because there's just people running everywhere. It's just what everybody's doing. So that's another factor. They're all also, I talked about it, they're all very focused on running, and the level of focus is almost hard to comprehend. We had, so in the UK, we have a very famous runner. I'm sure most of you will know, Mo Farah. He won the last 2 Olympic doubles at 5,000 and 10,000 meters. He's a man that Kenyans say he gives them sleepless nights because they can't seem to beat him, except in the marathon they managed to. But Mo Farah, interestingly, so he won the gold and silver in 2012 and 2016 in the Olympics. The 2 golds, 2 double gold. But in 2008, he didn't even make the final. He was a top runner there. At that time, he was the European champion. So he was a very good runner, but he didn't make the final. He got knocked out in the heats. And if you read his book, or if you talk to him, or you talk to people who know him, what happened between 2008 and 2012 is he went to live with the Kenyans. And initially, he didn't go to live with them in Kenya. There's a group in London of Kenyans who come for the track season and then for the road running season. And they live in southwest London in this small house, which I've been to. And Mo Farah's agent was the same agent as these runners. And he said to him, why don't you go and move in with the Kenyans and see how they're running? Because, you know, he failed to make the final in Beijing. He wanted to see what these guys who he was trying to beat were doing. So he tells the story. So he's already European champion, but he said he's shocked. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to, I think we've seen enough of my children, beautiful as they are, and their friends. So he said he was shocked by how they lived. So they would get up in the morning, they would go training, they would come back, they would shower, and then Mo Farah would be like, okay, what are we doing now? Should we go and get a coffee? Or, you know, should we go and see some friends, or go, you know, get something for lunch, go to the supermarket? And they all looked at him like, we're going to bed. That's what we do. We get out, we run, we come home, we go to bed. And he couldn't get his head around that. And he said he realized that he had a complete shift in mentality, that if he wants to be as good as they are, he has to completely 100% focus. And here you are, you have a country with thousands of runners at that level of dedication, even the ones who aren't successful, because their hope is there that they can be successful and that they can transform their lives. So it's quite a powerful thing already, this huge number of dedicated, focused runners helping each other. That's already quite a powerful thing. The second major factor is the upbringing of these men and women, and it's interesting because almost without exception, and I haven't found an exception, and this is what everybody says, and the coaches tell me when you talk to people, almost without exception. I say almost because there may be somebody, but as far as I know, without exception, they're all from rural backgrounds. So all the Kenyan runners were brought up in rural Kenya, and almost all in the high altitude areas. And this is interesting because if you ever talk to a Kenyan runner and say, why are the Kenyans so good? Which was a question I asked many, many times. I asked hundreds of Kenyans this question. And one of the most common answers is because, it's because when we were younger, we had to run to school. And then at lunchtime, we ran home for lunch, and we had to run back to school. And then in the evening, we ran home again. And they would say, we were training before we knew it. And it's interesting. So they do lead these incredibly active lives where they're running to school. Obviously, they're not doing necessarily tempo runs. They're running, walking, having fun on the way. But there's a lot of running to school, and also back and forth at lunchtime was almost the big training, because you had only an hour to get home, eat, and get back to school. Then when they get home from school, they're having to go and fetch the cows or go and fetch water from the river. So they're living these very active lives. And like I said, they're doing all of this at altitude. So without getting too much into the science here, because time is limited, high altitude improves the body's capacity for carrying oxygen, which obviously helps lung capacity and helps you when you come down to sea level, which is where most of the races are. They're also doing all this running as children barefoot. And this is a really, really interesting subject. And you could almost give an entire talk just on this subject. But so very, very basically, good running form generally involves landing on your mid-foot to forefoot. And you can do it with your hand. If you do that, as opposed to that with your heel, you'll feel there's much less impact. The impact is spread. If you land on your heel, the impact forces will go right up into your knees, into your hips, in a much more dramatic way. And what's interesting is if you run barefoot, you can't really heel strike. Your body won't let you, because it's just too much. But with nice cushioned running shoes, you can. So for everywhere else in the world, or a lot of other places, people go out running in shoes, they can develop bad form. The shoes allow you to develop bad form. You don't necessarily have to, but once your body starts getting lazy, when your lifestyle is lazy, if you not necessarily lazy, but it's comfortable, it's a nice lifestyle where you get driven to school, where you have a sofa at home, where you can watch TV, where you sit down to eat around a table, all these things which are perfectly fine, but which are not necessarily good for your body. They can mean your body's, when it starts running, is a bit lazy, it's not as tough as it necessarily should be. And you end up running on your heels because your shoes allow you to do that. So it's a long, long story, but the Kenyans generally run barefoot. And there's a book called Born to Run, which is very, very popular, which goes into much more depth about this, and it was a huge bestseller. And I read it just before I went to Kenya. And he talks about this, and I was fascinated, because I was like, wow, this is amazing. And this must be the secret, because it's such a good sell, because if you have good running form, you can run at the same speed with less energy, you have more bounce. I mean, it's just such an important thing, running form, in terms of running fast, conserving energy, being able to compete at any level. But the better your running form, the easier it is to run faster. So I was fascinated by this book, and particularly because this book was based on research by a Harvard professor in the US who'd studied Kenyan runners. And I hadn't been to Kenya at this point, but I was like, well, this must be the secret. They're all running around barefoot. And so, at one point I even thought, this is kind of going to ruin my book, because I know the secret before I even get there. But then I got to Kenya, and it was quite interesting. And I got quite surprised, because I looked around all these hundreds and thousands of runners, and none of them were barefoot. So I was like, scratching my head, what's going on here? I thought the barefoot thing was the Kenyan thing, and they're all wearing shoes. And so I was a bit confused about that until I went to a school's cross-country race. And this is where I have a couple more pictures. I'll just share these. And so here we go. So this is the finish line at the school's cross-country. And as you can see, everybody is barefoot. And it was really fascinating at this race, because in every race, there were maybe 200 or 300 children, and there were probably 1 or 2 of them who had running shoes on in each race. And in every race, the 2 or 3 children came right at the back, to the point where the nicer the shoes, the further back they were, which was fascinating to me. And here's another close-up of their feet. And so what happens is, because they grow up running barefoot at altitude, living these incredible active lives, they just have this wonderful running form. And people often describe the Kenyan running as effortless, and they look so powerful. And people get quite lyrical, and I have done that as well, describing the Kenyans. But a lot of it comes from having grown up running barefoot. So great form, upbringing, rural upbringing, lifestyle is kind of the second key factor. The third key factor is that a culture has grown up in Kenya around running. So a lot of these factors I'm talking about, the running to school, the rural upbringing, fetching the cows, running around barefoot, many people will be thinking, well, that's not unique to Kenya, right? That happens in other parts of the world, including with the altitude in parts of India, I'm sure. But what's happened in Kenya is success has bred success. The idea of running as a viable option, as a viable career has become a real thing. And there is a system in place. So in Iten, there were, I can't remember the number, but there were probably about 40 or 50 training camps where people would come from all over the country. They weren't all from Iten. They would come from all over the country and live in these training camps, which were run by managers, mostly European and American managers, who would then select the fastest runners, send them to races abroad. So there's this whole kind of system. It's grown up organically. It hasn't been, the Athletics Association in Kenya is pretty useless. They haven't really imposed this or developed this themselves. It's kind of grown up from the grassroots up, a way of supporting the runners. And this kind of goes back to Kip Keino winning the Olympics in 72. And even before that, Abebe Bikele in Ethiopia winning in 64, which would have inspired a lot of Kenyans as well. And so this system has gone up. So you get this situation where someone from a poor family in rural Kenya, their parents are subsistence farmers, living on very little, just growing enough food to eat, will wake up one day after maybe doing well at school in the cross-country race and say, Mom, Dad, I'm not going to be helping on the farm anymore. I'm going to stop. I'm just going to go to bed in the afternoon because I'm going to become an athlete. And you can imagine in other parts of the world where there isn't this running culture, the parents will say, what are you talking about? We need your help on the farm. You can't stop like sleeping and lazing around and going for morning runs and that's all you do. But in Kenya, there's a celebration. It's like, wow, we have a runner in the family. We have hope. And so there's this support system where even the poorest people will support their children if they think they will become athletes. Or sometimes, I'm generalizing hugely. I mean, but there's usually a way. There's usually another athlete nearby who might support, or an uncle, but basically it's seen as a positive thing. It's almost like someone in India perhaps saying, I'm going to be a doctor, I want to go to medical school, and the family go, oh great, we'll try and support that. In Kenya, it's become an athlete. So all this feeds in. You've got these huge numbers, this very tough upbringing, the altitude, the barefoot running, and then the system. And that all comes together to produce the great Kenyan story, in my view. There are other factors which I haven't gone into, but I think are slightly more minor, such as the motivation behind the fact that Kenya is a poor country, so you don't have to win that much money to have a big impact. Diet is another interesting area. The running camps, the rest. But some more of that will come out when I start talking about Japan. So and also there's this idea when people read my book, when people talk to me, they want to know what they can do as themselves as an amateur runner. How can I benefit from what you've learned, and what can I learn, and what can I apply to my own running? And a lot of that you can't apply. You can't apply growing up at altitude. You can't apply running around as a child barefoot. You can't apply living in a running culture. But there are things I did learn that I did apply. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about Japan first, and I can see the time is ticking on, so I'll skirt through it, and then because in a way the comparison between the two is very fascinating. So very quickly, I wrote my book, Running with the Kenyans. It was popular. It was well received. The publishers were very delighted. They wanted me to write another book. So they said, why don't you go to Ethiopia, right? Running with the Ethiopians. And I just thought, well, that story is very similar, but there is another running culture, which is very interesting, but is very, very different. And so in Japan, there were two key things that attracted me to Japan. So one is that Japan is the only place in the world where they have salaried runners. So everywhere else in the world, if you're a professional runner, you're surviving on sponsorship from a shoe company, maybe you know, whoever, a sunglass company, whatever. And then your prize money and perhaps a small grant from a government organization or an athletics federation. But it's all based on your performances, and it's quite a difficult thing to achieve, particularly with the Kenyans winning everything. If you're from anywhere else, you've got quite to kind of make a mark is quite difficult. In Japan, they have these professional teams, a bit like sports teams in team sports. So Honda have a team, Toyota have a team, Konica Minolta have a team, and they pay runners to join the team, like say the football players in Liverpool and Manchester United are paid a salary to be footballers. So that's very interesting already. That's a very unique, and I worked out there about 2,000 professional runners in Japan, about 1,000 men, 1,000 women. And again, when you look back at countries like the UK, how many full-time professional runners we have, you know, in long distance, I'd say, you know, somewhere between 20 and 30. It's a tiny amount compared to Japan. And the second thing which is fascinating about Japan is that the biggest races are not the marathons or the half marathons, but the ekidens. Now, I'd never heard of ekiden, but an ekiden is a long distance relay race. And the biggest sporting event of the year in Japan is a race called the Hakone Ekiden, which is a 212-kilometer relay between, there's 10 runners, so running about 21 kilometers per leg from the center of Tokyo to Mount Fuji and back over 2 days. And the whole country comes to a standstill. It's like huge. It's like the biggest thing. And so that was interesting. And it was very interesting as a way of looking at Japanese culture and Japanese mindset in the way that they were much happier running for a team than for their own personal glory and for their own personal fulfillment. And so these dynamics were partly why I went to Japan to write my book. But also the Japanese are incredible runners as well. And as Amit said in the intro, they after the Kenyans and the Ethiopians, and these days some Ugandans as well, by far the next best nation at running long distance is Japan. And so it was interesting. So I had this question, why? And I just have one little statistic which kind of encapsulates how good they are, which I like, because it's easy to remember, but it's funny. So I'd been in Japan in 2013. So in 2014, I was back in the UK. And I remember one day they had the British half marathon championships. So all the top British runners were in this one race. Mo Farah wasn't running because that would have skewed things, because he's so much faster than anyone else in the UK. So without him there, it was a big race. Nobody knew who was going to win. There were lots of all the other best British runners were there, and it was won in just outside 64 minutes, 64 something, by Scott Overall. Now, in the same day in Japan, they had the Japanese university half marathon championships. So that's just university runners, none of the professional runners. So just the younger up and coming university runners. And the guy the British guy, if he'd run the same time in that race, he would have finished 100th position. So there were 100 Japanese students running faster than the British champion, running under 64 minutes. And just by comparison, again, I looked up the Indian record, and the best ever Indian half marathon time is 63:53. So maybe the Indian record might have scraped in the top 95 in the university Japanese championships. So again, there's an amazing depth of talent and amazing passion for running in Japan. And I'm just going to quickly catch up with some photos to give you a kind of flavor of some of this while we're here. So we're moving on from the Kenyan runners. This is just, I'll skim through these. There's some Kenyan runners relaxing in their training camp. Rest is something, another one of these small factors I haven't managed to talk about, but maybe we'll get to in the questions. So here we are in Japan. And these are, like I say, these Japanese runners run for teams. And these teams have supporters, like football clubs in any other country. I don't think anywhere else in the world you see supporters with their flags waving running teams like you do in Japan. And they have their own cheerleaders. And there's a lot of passion involved in Japan. This is from the Hakone Ekiden race. You know, there's the fervor, the helicopters are flying over, the streets are closed. It's such a big deal. And everybody likes to show how much effort they're putting in. And for example, this is one running team. So the front row, you have the coach in the middle, and then the athletes. And behind that, you have all the other runners. Not all the backup, the support team. So the nutritionists, the physios, the administrators. So it's a huge thing. You could imagine if Manchester United was standing there with all their admin staff and trainers and caretakers, it would look a similar thing. Whereas most running clubs is just the runners and maybe one or two coaches. So it's an amazing thing. And this picture illustrates that these guys are in Japan are big stars. They earn big money. People have posters of them on their walls. So it's a completely different thing. So I went to Japan to find out about all of this, and it was fascinating, and also to find out why they do so well. And just briefly, my whole quest to find out why they were so good was kind of turned on its head while I was in Japan one day, when I had a conversation with a Kenyan runner in Japan. Now, it's interesting because these Ekiden teams, these relay teams, they're allowed to sign foreign runners in the way that maybe a British football team will sign a Brazilian or an Argentinian, striker. They will sign a Kenyan or an Ethiopian runner to come and make their team better. And there's restrictions. So most teams have got one or two Kenyans or Ethiopians in the team. And I was talking to this Kenyan runner, and he said he'd been there for a few years, and he was completely blown away by the level of enthusiasm, the support, the fervor about running in Japan. And he said something really interesting to me. He said, if the Japanese train like the Kenyans, he said, all the world records, they break all the world records. That sentence sent me on a spiral, because I thought that's fascinating, because the Japanese themselves just think they can't beat the Kenyans because the Kenyans are just superior. They're just built differently. And there's been a lot of research into genetics around running and sport. And there has been no evidence that Kenyans have any genetic advantage over anybody else. And so it was interesting to hear this Kenyan saying these Japanese, with the support and the level of athletes coming through, and like the university athletes are such good standard, that they should be beating the Kenyans, he thought. So obviously the follow-up question is, well, what's wrong with the training? You're saying if they train like the Kenyans, so what are they doing wrong? And in some ways, this was fascinating. And so his first complaint was very surprising. His first complaint was they train too hard. So that's one to get your head around, particularly from the West. So in the West, we have this attitude, and very much so, even more in Japan, that if you want to achieve something, you work hard. Okay, hard work brings success, and if you haven't got success, it's because you're lazy. Whereas, and you think even more so in running, right? Because it's a hard thing to do. And here you have a Kenyan runner saying the Japanese are training too hard. And I love that. And we have to unpack that, because the Kenyans are training very hard. Kenyan runners are not, they spend a lot of time if you saw their training schedule, you'd be kind of, wow, that's a lot. But the Japanese are going over the top. So Japanese runners are running 3 times every day. They're never running easy. So the Kenyans will, although they train most days twice, sometimes 3 times, but mostly twice a day, they will always take a day off once a week. Usually Sunday, they will rest completely. And also the Kenyans love to run easy. Well, they love that word easy. So today is easy, and easy is very slow. I mean, even for me, like someone who was trying for sub 3 hours, here I am training with guys run 2:05, 2:06 marathon. It was easy for me. It was like 7 minutes a kilometer, 10 minutes a mile, just jogging, very slow. And they do that a lot. They do a lot of that. And then when they go fast, they go really fast. And there's a funny little story. I think I've just about got time for it. Whereas one day I turned up, so I used to join them on their easy runs because I was never going to keep up on the fast run. And one day I turned up and I got my days wrong. and they all were looking a bit worried. They meet in the morning and it's quite dark. And one of the runners came over and he said to me, you know, today is fast. I was like, oh, I thought it was easy day. No, he said, no, it's Tuesday. I was like, oh, okay. I said, you know what, I'll just try. Don't worry about me. If I'm dropped in half a mile, I'm dropped in half a mile. You just carry on. I'll just see how far it lasts. So I thought it'd be an experience. And so they went, okay. And they were doing 18 kilometers. So it was a long run. And we went, okay, let's go. And we went, and okay. I've just been told not to rush too much. So, so they said, I said, let's see how we go. And so we set off, and it was less than 100 meters I lasted. And I had to quickly, I saw this side road, and I felt like I was sprinting, and it was uphill as well. So I just quickly took my turning and let them go. And so the Kenyans, when they train hard, they train hard. So the second complaint this Kenyan guy in Japan, was like, there's no speed work here. The Japanese are doing everything at this kind of medium tempo for him, what he found medium tempo. And that partly because they weren't running easy on their easy days. They didn't have the energy to really push hard in the hard days and the fast days. So that was interesting. And the third complaint he had was, and this was quite nicely expressed when I met two Ethiopians later at another race, and they had exactly the same complaint, the training. And they expressed the third complaint by saying, no forest, there's no forest. And what they meant is that the Japanese do all their training on hard tarmac, concrete, on the roads, on the pavement beside the roads. And they refuse to run on the trails. The Japanese are very health and safety conscious. They're worried they might trip on tree roots, they might stumble. So they do it all on the concrete. They also like to measure everything very accurately. So it's easier to like paint lines and know exactly that loop is 1 kilometer, that loop is 2 kilometers. So they're always training on the asphalt, on the tarmac concrete. Whereas the Kenyans, interestingly, and the Ethiopians do 90% of their training on the trails. So in Kenya, they have these big wide dirt roads, which they run on, but they're very uneven. The ground is uneven at times, and you have to watch your footing. And the Ethiopians, actually, I did spend 2 weeks in Ethiopia training there, which I was part of the research. They train on even more uneven terrain, leaping over rocks through these really steep wooded paths. And that's interesting, because when you run on the trails, you're giving your whole body more of a workout. It's more demanding. So when you then get on the road, it suddenly feels easier. It's a bit like training at altitude and then coming down from altitude. It's also, of course, the ground's softer, so you're less likely to get injured. So and my own anecdotal evidence was that there were way more injuries in Japan among the groups I was training with, the professionals and the amateurs. Almost everybody I spent time with either was injured or was coming back from an injury, or had a bad injury, or had a niggle. When Kenya, it was much lower rate, probably 5% compared to 90% in Japan. That's just my own anecdotal experience, but it was pretty stark. So where are we? Yeah, I'm pretty much there. So just to kind of sum up, then, I mean, I feel like I've been a bit negative about Japan, but Japan there's a wonderful fervor around running, and it's a wonderful place to experience the races, and they have a real joy of running and a real appreciation of running, which doesn't exist anywhere else. Even in Kenya and Ethiopia, it's only really among the running community that running is popular. In terms of a spectator sport, even in Kenya, football is probably more popular. But in Japan, running is everything. Running is huge. And so that was wonderful to see. But I felt like in the end, my question was not why are they so good, but why are they not beating the Kenyans, or at least competing closer? And there are other reasons for that. And again, we can't get into everything here. But I just thought, combining those two experiences, what we can learn ourselves as amateur runners, and the things that I have learned myself, is one is to rest where possible. So so the Kenyan, so the Japanese are famously the Japanese are famously not good at resting. There's been surveys on it, and they're the country in the world where people have the least sleep on average over the whole country. And people are always, you know, they spend more days in the office than anyone else. You see people falling asleep on the trains on the way home because everybody's working hard. Everybody's up early in the morning, off on outings. Nobody relaxes. Nobody has a garden with like seats in it for them to relax in. And the runners are the same. They're constantly busy. Most of the runners, they have their salary. They're given a salary by a company to be a runner. But when they're not running, they then go into the office and have certain chores they need to do in the office, even though primarily they're professional athletes. Where in Kenya, they're kings of resting. As I talked about Mo Farah, he learned how they would just, after the run, they would go to bed. The Kenyans are sleeping. I mean, I stayed in 2 training camps for combined time of about six weeks. Most of the time I was with my family and we rented a house. But I spent 6 weeks in the training camps. And every night by 9 o'clock, I just look around. And suddenly I realized everyone's gone to bed. It's just me here, 9 o'clock. So I would go to bed. I just couldn't sleep that much. I just wasn't used to it. But they would just go sleep. And then in the afternoon they would sleep. So rest was a really important thing. And something that we can do. And there's research that says this, people know sleep is good for them, but they don't do it. So it's easy to, especially now with your phones and your internet, you kind of, you know, you're up late at night and then you decide to check, you know, Twitter one more time. But the Kenyans don't, particularly the runners, they're so focused that they know they can't do that. They turn it off, they go to bed. The second interesting thing that I learned was to go slow on my slow days. So I used to run every run like I felt like I had to kill myself otherwise it wasn't a proper run. And it was amazing to see these world champions, Olympic champions, world record holders running at 10 minutes per mile, 7 minutes per kilometer, and having no problem with that. So now I run my slow runs slower, do some speed work. Not everybody does speed work, but I think if you want to improve, as the Kenyans show, speed work's important. Go slow. I said that, go slow on your slow days. And my final thing is form, running form. It's such a big subject. The only thing I would say with running form is you need to be careful with that. So this whole idea of barefoot running, the book Born to Run says, just take your shoes off and you will run better. And that's not the case. Once our bodies are used to running in shoes, it's not so easy to revert your form. But if you can find somebody who's a form coach, or if you can find some drills to help with your form, anything you can do to make your form better, it's really going to help. It's going to help you get that little bit closer to running like a Kenyan. So there's loads more I could have talked about. I tried to squeeze as much in as I could, but I think so that we have time for the questions, I think I'll end it there. So thank you very much. I hope you managed to get something from that. Amit, are you there? Am I still here?
Yep.
Yes.
Thanks, Adhar, for that fascinating insight on Kenyan and Japanese running. So we have a few questions ready from our audience. This is very interesting. First question. Rajesh wants to know how difficult was it to get to Japan and do a book on their running? It is very closed and hardly any interaction with the outside world and language issues. Did they let you become part of them easily?
No, so this was very difficult. And I'd spent about a year before I got to Japan trying to get in with different contacts. And what I realized in Japan, nobody will say no. Everybody will just put you off rather than say no. So I kept thinking I had all these leads, but I realized as I was, and when you say it was easy to get to Japan, we actually took the train from England to Japan. So that's a whole nother story with my 3 children all across Russia. But I remember setting out on that train journey, realizing I had nothing organized. I had no contact in any running club. That had come back to me, and I was very worried. But luckily, I was very tenacious. I got there, and I managed to get in with a coach from a university team. And this guy who was an agent for runners managed to get me into a corporate team. There was some luck involved. I met the coach at a meeting, and it just so happened that where I was living in Japan, in the exact neighborhood, was the neighborhood he was from. So he suddenly became friendly. But you're right. It was almost like a Japanese journalist coming to England and saying, "Oh, I want to train with Manchester United." You can't just walk up to these running clubs and join in these ekiden teams. They're very, very serious. The annual ekiden is like so serious. They don't want this Western journalist turning up and hanging around. They've got no interest in that. They are purely focused on the task at hand. So it was very difficult, and I ended up having to make that part of the book because it was such an interesting, long-winded journey. I ended up sleeping on the floor in this hotel because I got to this place. They wouldn't let me stay, so the hotel was full. But it became part of the adventure and part of the way in which Japan works. Like you say, they weren't like in Kenya. You just, you'd be walking along the street and like some guy who was the world record holder come up and say, hi, how you doing? Hey, why don't you come and run with me tomorrow? Whereas in Japan, it took months and months of talking to the right people, going to meetings, going to more meetings, promising this, that, and the other, giving talks at universities. The university team I was in with, I had to give a talk at the university to kind of give them something in return. So anyways, it was a real challenge, but I got there in the end, luckily for me.
Thanks. Sundar wants to know, what's your take on virtual racing, especially the one you have described in your blog of attempting a sub-3 full marathon by 6 runner as a part of Ipswich Ekiden?
Oh, what was the beginning of that question? What's my take on?
Virtual racing, especially the one you have described in your blog of attempting a sub-3. Yep. Yeah,
so this is this comes from the Japan Ekidens. This is an Ekiden, and it's the Japanese format, and I really like it because it changes your whole outlook on running, because now you're not just running for yourself. And even in our Ekiden we did a few weeks ago, I did it in England. You feel like, particularly once the first runner has gone, like the ball is rolling now, and you take that ball and you've got to do your best, and there's a real sense of responsibility. But it also changes how you run, because you're also a bit more cautious, because you don't want to blow it by going too fast and then struggling, and and I think that affects the way the Japanese run, because a lot of Kenyans will run really, really hard. The start of a Kenyan cross-country race is incredible. It's like 400 runners, 100% flat out sprint. But in Japan, they won't do that. It's more measured. And that's partly because in an Ekiden, if you take a risk and it goes wrong, and then you end up ruining your whole team's chances. It's better to be 10 seconds, 20 seconds slower and not take the risk. So you're more cautious in a way, but it changes the whole dynamic of running. And to do it sometimes is a lot of fun, to be part of a team and you all get together. And so, yeah, I love the relay running. It'd be interesting. I wish in Tokyo Olympics, they would do something with the Ekiden and the relay run, because it just changes the way you run. And in Japan, it changes the way they train as well. And it's because they have to get used to running on your own, because when you start, you don't start all together. You start maybe behind someone, you have to chase them, or you're ahead. So there's a lot of psychology involved, but it's interesting. It's interesting. I think it should be more of it around the world.
Yep. Thanks. This is an interesting question by Sundar again. What roles do the cultures play specifically in the running scene of a country? How can you relate and compare the culture, background of a country, the travels and the turmoils that a nation has undergone in its history? Do these reflect in any manner in their running culture?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously you start talking in big generalizations when you start talking about this, but I think there are definitely some elements. So I think in Japan, a lot of the running and the fervor for running came in the aftermath of the Second World War, where Japan had been devastated in the war. It lost the war. A lot of cities had been flattened. So there was a real sense of having to rebuild, and they saw running as something that embodied all the right characteristics they needed to rebuild the country: determination, effort. And so all these characteristics, which became kind of valued characteristics in modern Japan, are embodied in running. And I think, and then the fact that they run relay races is interesting, because there's a saying in Japan, which is, I was told many, many times, it kept coming up, and it's the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. And there's this idea that you don't disrupt your community. You don't stand out. You don't become showy. Everything works together in harmony in community. And so that figures it's better to run together as a team. And one Japanese man told me it's in some sports it's a problem. He said, like in football, nobody wants to be the one to score. Everybody wants to be the one to pass because that's seen as more valuable. But obviously you need a selfish player who wants to score in that sport. But in running this, as they changed it into an ekiden, then in Kenya, I think the culture in Kenya is more apparent, less in the running and more in the way that this running system exists, because there is no support in Kenya from the authorities, and the sponsors are only sponsoring the very top athletes. But there are thousands of athletes who would not be able to run if there wasn't this kind of organic support network. And so lots of the Kenyan runners will support the up and coming runners, the younger runners themselves, the successful runners. And there was even a study in Japan, these Kenyan runners who go to Japan, the teams in Japan realized that the Kenyans were sending the money back to Kenya, to their families, to their communities, to other runners. And they said, oh, we must educate them. They need to keep their money because the running career is short. And if they don't keep the money, they're going to need this money when they retire. But the Kenyans were like, no, it doesn't work like that. I managed to become a runner because I was supportive when I was younger. Now I need to do my bit to support the guys coming up. And so the motto of Kenya is Harambe, which is all pulled together. And there's a real sense in Kenya that without that, the whole system would fall apart. There is no system otherwise. The government are not involved. The Athletics Federation are not involved. So they're doing it together. And so that's an amazing thing to see.
Thanks. Rakesh wants to know that he's quite fast. He's 127 half marathoner and would like to get faster like a Kenyan runner whom he met was 63 minutes. So if he follows a training plan, his training plan, can he get faster?
I imagine, I mean, the secret of the Kenyans is definitely not in their training. But saying that, you can go wrong in it. The Kenyan training plans are very simple usually. And you can almost tell a Kenyan it's either easy or he'll work on Monday, it's track on Tuesday, it's easy on Wednesday, it's kind of tempo run Friday, long run Saturday, rest Sunday. I mean, and all the rest, the second runs are easy. So if you're following that, it's fine. You're not going to go wrong. You need to do some speed work. You need to do some easy running, maybe some second runs where you go easy, which is probably what this Kenyan would give him. It would be a good program, but it's the other things. It's the mindset. So the Kenyans have this amazing mindset where they're not worrying all the time. They're not worrying when they're running. They're very able to switch the analytical mind off, which is a really difficult thing for lots of us to do. Then there's the resting. I talked about the resting. Go to bed early. You'll be amazed how much better you feel on your run the next day if you go to bed at 10 o'clock compared to midnight. That 2 hours, you'll run way better. These small things that the Kenyans do, eat very simple food. I didn't talk much about the diet, and I don't think the diet is the secret, but they are very careful with their food, not because they're careful, but just because that's all that's available there is very simple food. So they're not eating junk food. And I think these things add up. And then, yeah, but the key thing with the training is get the speed work in and run easy on your easy days. I don't know what it's like in India, but in the UK, 99% of runners, when they go for an easy run, it's still tiring them out, and you're not rested for the next day. So that's my biggest takeaway, I think.
Okay, thanks. Question from Naveen. He wants to know, like, what will it take for any other country, India or any other country, to rule the marathons like Kenyans or any East African are doing now?
Well, it's difficult because a lot of those reasons why the Kenyans are good at running are not really desirable from a society point of view. You don't really want a poor country. You don't want your population to be poor and having to run to school and having to run to fetch water because there's no water in the house. And so it's not necessarily, a lot of these things are come out of necessity rather than being desired. But I know there are more and more runners going to live in Kenya. So Mo Farah did that. There's a guy at the moment, Julian Wonders, who's running some amazing times from Switzerland, who lives in Italy. There's these two New Zealand twins who live in Kenya and Ethiopia. So there is this element that like the top guys can go and emulate, but I don't think anywhere else you'll see the numbers. Well, unless somewhere like India, which is a huge population, has the mountains, has a lot of poverty, has people running barefoot. I mean, I don't know how it would happen, but I don't think like a Western country would have the raw materials to challenge. But I often wondered in South America, perhaps in Colombia, where they're very good at cycling, they've got the altitude. Maybe we could start something. but India is another possibility. And I know one of your guests, Hugo, who lives in Kenya, has been training the Indian team, and he's been trying to kind of maybe instigate the beginnings of that. And yeah, it'd be amazing to see. I mean, the Indians, surely you guys are skinny, you got, because like in the Andes, for example, some of the groups who live there are like in Bolivia and Peru, they're quite stocky, like physically. And like in West Africa, they're not built for long distance running, but Indians surely should be able to run from the mountains in India. I don't know. That's my thought.
Yeah, thanks. Balaji wants to know that this topic it was partially covered in your recent podcast with Abhi Nagui. It was about athletes trying to gamble by participating in many events and seeing whether they can find a quick route to success. How do successful athletes in Kenya manage to stay focused and train consistently without succumbing to the race mania?
Yeah, so again, it's difficult to generalize because there have been a lot of Kenyans who've done very well in one race. I know one guy, he won the Dubai Marathon. He won $1 million. He's never done anything since. He just, it distracted him. But then there are other runners like Eliud Kipchoge who has won everything but keeps coming back, keeps focused. So I think a lot of it depends just on the character, and then the group you're in and the people you're surrounded with. But there is definitely a sense that, particularly for the runners who are coming up, the competition is so fierce to get a race in Kenya that they are maybe, and this is what Abdi was saying, they're kind of pushing themselves too hard. They're willing to race anywhere, willing to do anything. And it's tricky and it's difficult for the young Kenyans coming through, particularly the more and more dominant the Kenyans become, the less appealing they are to the race directors. The race directors, it's just like, oh, another Kenyans run 205. That's not very interesting. It's more interesting if there was an Indian guy who could run 205. I'd be interested. That's unusual. But just to have another Kenyan, so they really have little choice but to grab whatever opportunity they can get, and that is a shame, but it's also just the reality of the situation. But they keep pushing and they do what they can, and you've got to have a bit of luck. Basically, some of these Kenyans will get picked up by a good manager, a good agent, who will tell them, no, we'll find you the right race at the right time. But a lot of them are getting. There are agents who are a bit unscrupulous. Will take them off to China or to Korea or some places where the races are not that big, where they can win, but then they don't give them the money. And there's lots of Kenyans who come home with nothing, having won a race in maybe Indonesia or somewhere. And so they are being taken advantage of. And it's sad to see, but it's just, there's no regulations there, and it's difficult for them. And I feel for a lot of the Kenyans who are just that little bit below the top level. If you're a Kenyan and you can run 207, for example, 208, it's just not good enough. And it's terrible because anywhere else in the world, you'd be the national champion, the record holder. Everybody would want you to you'd be a big star. And so you can see why some of them will end up switching nationality as well. And there's a problem with Kenyans running for Turkey and running for Bahrain because suddenly they're somebody again. So it's a problem, and it's difficult for them. But it's the numbers coming through. Enough of them will find the right path, but there'll still be at London every year 10 super fast Kenyans who no one else can live with. So
Thanks. Narayanan wants to know how much does the weather influence training and success of Kenyan and Japanese runners?
That's an interesting one. So a lot of people imagine in Kenya it's very hot and difficult to train, but because they're at high altitude, the weather is actually perfect for training. And they run early in the morning where it's probably about 10, 15, somewhere between 10 and 15 degrees. So a little bit warm, but nothing difficult. And then, yeah, it's just a lot of the other nationalities, Americans, Europeans will go to Kenya to train, not necessarily to be inspired by the Kenyans, but just because it's such a good training location. And that's partly the altitude, it's partly all the dirt trails, and it's partly the weather. The weather's always, all year round, it's the same pretty much. Japan's a completely different story. The weather is really difficult in Japan because in summer it can be sweltering hot, and then in winter it's snow. So they have real extremes to deal with. But it's interesting, the Japanese always do well in races where the weather is quite extreme. So in the Boston Marathon a couple of years ago, you had Yuki Kawauchi won in terrible conditions. And whenever there's been a really hot like championships in a World or Olympic Games, so 2004 in Athens was very hot. The women's race was won by a Japanese woman. 2000 in Sydney, I think, was the Japanese did very well. I can't remember in the men and the women, maybe first in one and second in the other. And so the Japanese, because they're used to these extreme weathers, they do find they actually do better in the championships than like lots of the big major marathons like London and New York are held in spring and autumn in those countries where the weather's just about right. Whereas in the championships in the summer can be in Greece in August, it can be really hot. So then the Japanese suddenly start doing better and everyone's like, wow, where do these guys come from? And it's because of the heat. They're used to that heat and they're used to the cold. So it's interesting, but yeah, it's not ideal in terms of fast times, but they still manage to run fast.
Okay, thanks. We have a question from Malugu Raghu. Do Kenyans do a lot of cross training as part of their regular training?
No, they don't. They have started to a little bit. I noticed the group Eliud Kipchoge trains with, they do kind of very simple gym workouts, so not with weights or anything, but they're doing like step ups and core exercises. And also Brother Colum, I mentioned him in the talk briefly, he trains lots of the very top athletes. And they do very simple core work where they're working, they'll do it for an hour, just lying on the grass. They don't have any equipment, but they'll be doing like leg raises and I mean, I'm not very good at that stuff, but they do a bit. But a lot of the majority of the runners are doing very little. And I was interested in that because I think core training for most people is very important. I think cross training and building your strength for most of us who haven't had that very active upbringing is more important. I think the Kenyans, because of their natural strength, because they grew up living such tough lives, probably have less need for it. But I noticed they have started doing more now. But if you go to one of these training camps, you usually find a stick with it's stuck into 2 cans of paint with filled with concrete, and it's not very heavy. They just kind of sit around doing a bit of that. But yeah, they don't ride bikes, they don't swim. I mean, this is 99%. Okay, you get 1 or 2. There is a few gyms out there. The very, very top athletes perhaps use them. But I've been in those gyms where I was in the gym once where Mary Katani was in there, and she won the New York Marathon 2 or 3 times and London 2 or 3 times, world record holder in the marathon. And she's like standing there like with the weights, but she's not doing it right at all. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's just kind of doing it because it's a nice environment. It looks like what you're supposed to do, but it's definitely not what's made her the great runner, because she's totally got, this machine basically isn't even working. It's just, she's just doing it for show. So yeah, so cross training is not a big thing in Kenya, not at all. But I think that we probably need it more than they do.
Okay, thanks. we have one last question that is from Nitesh Kumar. How is ultra running scene in Kenya? Will we see them in ultra running distances in future?
Well, this is a brilliant question, because in my book about ultra running, I try to convince the Kenyans to start ultra running, and with very little success. So first of all, I had a guy who had run 2:04. He was interested in running 50 miles, but he's like, "How many days is that?" I'm like, "Well, you did 26 miles in 2 hours, right?" So 50 miles, it's not going to take you days. It's going they basically can't get their head around running more than a marathon. It just, to them, it's like I don't know. They're like, "What? This is crazy. You run for," like, if you tell them you run 24 hours, oh my God, they think you're insane. And there's some interesting reasons behind that. I mean, obviously, it is a leap. When I first heard about ultra running, it was a leap to me to try and get my head around it, having thought that a marathon was like the ultimate distance, and then realized, oh wait, there you can go 100 miles. This is crazy. But also the Kenyan running world is based around making a living and earning money from running. And at the moment, there's very few ultra races which are offering prize money, offering opportunities. And so the Kenyans are not being invited because the Kenyans races which are organized by their managers. The managers are not looking at ultra running because there's no opportunity to make money there. So I tried to get that going. We were a little bit unlucky. We had a race cancelled. We had a guy not get his visa. We had a few mishaps. But I think it would be fascinating to see, particularly up to like 50 mile, maybe 100 kilometers, see there's some really, I had a guy who'd agreed to do a race who was a 2:08 marathon runner. So a 2:08 Kenyan guy running against like those top American ultra runners would be brilliant. I think I'd love to see it. So I haven't 100% given up on the idea, and I'm sure somebody will do it eventually. But I think they could break some records, basically. There was when Eliud Kipchoge ran his sub 2-hour marathon, they said he ran so fast that he could have walked the next 8 kilometers and broken the world record for 50K. He could have just walked at a slow pace. He was that far ahead. So I think yeah, they could cause some serious damage if they ever got around to it, because they love running on trails and they love running on mountains. So they've got no problem with that. So yeah, yet to be seen.
Interesting. Thanks. Thanks again, Adhar, for that wonderful insight. Now I request our senior runner from Hyderabad Runners, Anil Kumar, for the closing note and vote of thanks. Over to Anil.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Amit, for the Q&A facilitation. Dear friends, runners, it was great and yet an informative session and inspiring about this week with Adharanand Finn. Yeah, I hope you all have enjoyed attending this event as much as we did organizing it. A few takeaways or insights for me from others' talk is how disciplined training along with various forms of running will help you to build a capacity to become a better runner. And his fascinating experience on mindset of Kenyan runners and training there and Japanese runners, culture, their success in training, what failures, what comes into picture to be a better runner. That also goes with the saying of Hyderabad Runners. We talk about training is the best form of to be better. So train well and be better. Thank you, Adharanand Finn, for an valuable inputs. Our deepest gratitude for you to taking time and sharing your experience on learning with us. I appreciate on behalf of Hyderabad Runners for your time. And to your audience, our audience, in terms of taking the time out, spending time with us on a Saturday evening. Dear friends, if you have any questions or anything as such for Adharanand, so we have a comment section below. Please go ahead and put your questions there. We will, backend team will definitely work with our Adharanand Finn to get that answered as soon as possible. And for those who missed this session, you can ask them to go to our Hyderabad Facebook website, and as well as Hyderabad Marathon YouTube channel, where this recording of this particular session would be there. I would ask them to go, request you to go spread the word on your Facebooks, on your social media accounts, and with the hashtag of Hyderabad Runners and Beyond the Track. So before we wind up this particular session, I would request all the members to follow the government guidelines and advisories. Be safe, be healthy, considering the number of cases increasing rapidly in the last few weeks. Adhar, thank you once again. Team, we will be back next Saturday with yet another expert and yet another interesting topic for you all. Just as you mark Sunday morning 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. for the Sunday long runs week after week, now we can mark every Saturday evenings from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. for our Beyond the Track webinars. So we hope to see you every Saturday. Until then, this is Anil Kumar from Hyderabad Runners signing off. I say this once again, stay safe, stay healthy. Bye for now. Thank you all.